Joining me now to share his opinion, because he's not afraid of cancellation, can't cancel him, is geopolitical analyst Sir Owen. How are you, sir?
Wonderful, David. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, so, here we are on the midterm election eve, and you, like me, don't really have much faith in the political game to provide anything of real substance, but yet people feel that's the only thing they can turn to give some kind of modicum of defense against the madness they see in D.C. Of course, everybody has their own filters about how they view the source of their problems, and there are many. But how do you feel heading into this election? This is going to be a big event, it looks like.
Well, it's going to be a big event, but I'm afraid it's just going to be more of the same when you really get down to it, more of the same we've been seeing for the last 30, 40 years, really. Just continuing on down the road towards dysfunctional governance, if for lack of a better term. Of course, I do think the Republicans are going to do well in the I think Elon Musk is, you were mentioning Elon a bit earlier. Elon today said that he was going to be voting Republican, at least in the Senate races. But he said he believed in a divided, he might vote Democrat, which he thought he would never do, when we get into the House and that sort of thing. He said he believes that a divided governmental apparatus is probably the best we can hope for. And I thought that was kind of brave of him to bring that out today. But it's something we've all been saying for a long time. When they start getting together and agreeing in Washington, we are really, really in trouble. And I don't have much.
One thing they've all agreed on in Washington is subsidizing the proxy war in Ukraine. And that hasn't done anything but make everything worse and more dangerous and economically perilous for us and a lot of other folks in Europe. But yet there's some signaling from Kevin McCarthy, who's as establishment and pro-war as you can get, where he's read the tea leaves of the political climate and the base, and he's saying, I don't think we should give unended money, which is not what, I would say you don't give any government subsidies to perpetual conflict and terrible war. But the mere fact that we're now at a point where a Republican potential leader of the House would say, hey, maybe we're not going to do more money because he's read how much political power is in that message. Maybe there's somehow an opportunity for a drawdown in that conflict. Do you see that as a possibility heading in if this is a big sweep and there's a big sentiment for so-called America first?
Well, of course, I do see that. There is a possibility that the American public will come out of their somnambulistic sleepwalking here and realize that the governmental functions or the governmental financial institutions are totally bankrupt. The United States of America, and all due to the spending in Washington, they owe, $31 trillion. Today it may be more than that, but between $31 trillion and I'm working on their way to $32 trillion. And we're looking at this year, a 2022 budget with, all the bells and whistles, a military budget. That's before this Ukraine spending. I mean, we're looking at a military budget of right at $1 trillion a year. That is an incomprehensible situation for a nation to be in, and I'm sure that our founding fathers would turn over in their grave if they were aware of it. But
I thought it was $999 billion.
Yeah, that's right. It's just a fantastic, and that really, when you load everything in, like nuclear weapons are control, not even in the budget. They are under the not Department of Defense, but they're under the Department of Energy. I mean, so there are other budgets over there, but if you add all the militarism and all of this global policing cost in, I mean, you're at $1 trillion this year. I'm sure you'd be at $1 trillion. And it's just disheartening that even if we're not directly in some sort of overt or publicly declared war somewhere, that we're financing a war in a place that makes absolutely no sense, or it's of absolutely little or no value to us. Absolutely none. I mean, the average man on the street here before the Ukraine thing blew up would not even know where Ukraine is, or particularly even more to the point, even care where Ukraine is. So it's just, and what we're doing is that if there are wheels within wheels, it seems as though we are actually with one hand, supporting the Ukraine war, and with the other hand, we're literally downsizing the economic power of our so-called partners in the EU, because they're all going to go into the mud this winter, or into the snow, as it will, with the energy crunch that they have themselves, at the behest and pushing and prodding of Washington, brought upon themselves and their energy sanctions against Russia. And now some very thoughtful nation has somehow managed to not only leave that as an option, that they might be able to say, well, we would like to go back and receive some gas or some energy from Russia. They have literally blown up one of the major pipelines, the NordStream 2, which was to support the European need for gas and oil. And Russia, by the way, wasn't trying to control anyone with those things. It was trying to make money. Very simple. I mean, it's an economic venture, and it had French, and it had German, and it had other partners in it in the Nord Stream project. But Washington just didn't want that to occur, and Biden said that they would stop Nord Stream, publicly said that we would stop Nord Stream one way or the other. And somebody did stop Nord Stream one way or the other.
Yeah, what did you make of the story that apparently we've heard some reports that Liz Truss said it's done like an hour after the Nord Stream thing blew up?
No, it wasn't an hour. It was a minute.
Okay.
1 minute after it was within minutes, within a minute or 2 minutes. Of course, that was according to the report out of New Zealand by .com, the place where that story, I believe, originated was with Kim.com, the commentator, and somehow he had access to information that had occurred, and that the iPhone that Truss had been hacked by the Russians, and the Russians are aware of it. So if that is a true story, a true account, and then Mr. .com is correct, quite frankly, that's a casus belli for war. So let us hope that that doesn't occur. But I mean, to blow up a multi-billion-dollar, and then the mainstream media had the temerity to launch the counter proposition that Russia had blown up its own pipeline. It's billions of dollars of investment, its own pipeline, when really all it would have had to do, if it was really wanting to deprive Europe of having any gas, is simply turn off the nozzle and at least leave all your infrastructure there for possible diplomacy down the road. Just doesn't make any sense to say, I mean, how stupid do they think that people are? I mean, I personally think it's very stupid to posit that Russia would blow up its own pipeline. And then, of course, you had the Polish former ambassador, Sikorski, within an hour after the blow-up, congratulating the United States. And then he retracted that, but he congratulated the United States. So I mean, we're in very, very dangerous times, and I just don't think, and not only do I not think, I know the average person on the street is simply not focused on this. But these little things can slip into something very, very bad, and I just can't imagine. They literally do not understand that the end of the world is about 15 minutes away if someone makes a mistake. The end of the world as we know it. Everyone sitting around their radio here today or watching the television and pursuing their job or doing whatever they're doing, that can all be over in 15 minutes. And in 30 minutes, most of the world can be gone. But that is a kind of steep precipice that we are looking down, and I just don't get the sense of urgency. I don't get it amongst some of my layman colleagues, and even some of my more well-informed colleagues don't seem to feel this sense of urgency. But I think that they need to really pay attention, because we are in very perilous times with these things.
So not only is nuclear war a possibility, which should be the biggest thing moving into an election consideration, is to avoid it at all costs, but there's also the economic precipice that we're on. I saw a piece out this week from Larry Johnson, the former CIA officer who's been on the program. He had a blog piece called "Did the Former Soviet Union Experience What Awaits Europe?" And it's about this book by Alex Craner, Grand Deception, The Truth About Bill Browder and the Magnitsky Act and Russian sanctions. But he goes into the history of the economic collapse that Russia experienced after the Soviet Union ended. And he has a quote from it saying, "The transition program engineered by the American deep state and its Wall Street patrons was nothing short of catastrophic for Russia. The perfect storm of sudden price liberalization, drastic curtailment of government spending and bank credit, and opening of domestic markets to unrestricted foreign competition produced a toxic brew that devastated Russian economy, destroyed its currency, and plunged much of the population into poverty and hunger. They saw the Russian middle class after 92 saw their savings evaporate, their real wages halve if they were fortunate enough to receive them at all, and economic reforms rapidly destroyed the nation's agricultural production, and store shelves went almost empty. In 92, the average Russian consumed 40% less than in 91. By 1998, some 80% of Russian farms went bankrupt, and the nation that was one of the world's leading food producers suddenly became dependent on foreign aid. About 70,000 factories shut down, and Russia produced 88% fewer tractors, 77% fewer washing machines, 77% less cotton fabric, and so forth. This was a serious situation. An acute health crisis emerged. Serious problems that still have implications for the Russian people to this day. And Larry Johnson is saying that might be coming to Europe and America if we don't get our financial house in order.
Well, I think Larry's spot on. I mean, basically, what happened to Russia is, and not only that, what happened to Russia, but the West's reaction to it. They basically treated it. Russia is a tremendous, the largest country in the world, and it is just rich with natural resources. And the Western nations went in and rape, pillage, and burn. Just grab what you can and take advantage of all of the turmoil. It is very interesting. I had read a story once, and I'm sure it must be true, that the very first aid that Washington sent to the Soviet was to send over the IRS to teach them how to collect taxes and really control, to collect taxes. Perhaps that's a good idea, but they sent them over to, they sent our state extortionist over to teach the new fledgling Russian nation how to extort taxes from their people. I thought that was a fantastic and an interesting story, an insightful story, by the way. But yes, it could well happen here. I mean, no one in the world has ever owed $31 trillion. I mean, everybody, and basically we have a fiat currency here in this country. That means that it works because everybody accepts it. They are willing to spend their time going to work, and in return, someone gives them some paper money or whatever, or transfers it to their account. And we all agreed that that can be exchanged with someone else for something else that we want, something we want or need. But there is absolutely no substance behind the United States dollar anymore. And it hasn't been since Nixon took the dollar off of the gold standard. And we owe $31 trillion, and now it's sort of a joke. I mean, here we're giving all this money to Ukraine. All they're doing is printing it and basically adding it directly to the national debt, because when you owe $31 trillion, you can't give anything to anyone because you don't have anything. You have to print some more. So, I mean, it really is, as long as the question is, what kind of jolt or what kind of shock could cause a loss of confidence or loss of willingness to exchange your time and effort and whatever for these IOUs? I think the Chinese are finding out now, and other nations are watching, because you remember one of the first moves that Washington and its cohorts and the EU did was to seize the Russian reserves that were deposited in, I believe, England and the UK in the banks. So some, $280 or $300 billion. Just steal them. And they, before that, had done exactly the same sort of thing to Venezuela when they were trying to disrupt the government and put in their protege as president, unelected protege in Venezuela. And it is now becoming apparently some sort of acceptable norm to just go in and literally, if you're unhappy or if Washington is unhappy with the situation, they basically lean on their EU or their so-called Western compatriots just to steal the people's money. And then that rolls back around to us. So what China right now, being one of our major debt holders, I would be very concerned if I were China about all this paper that you own, the United States paper, because it just is what do you exchange it for? There was just a situation in Canada where the Trudeau has just gotten in the middle of stopping a transaction where the Chinese were buying some, I believe, lithium resources or investing in companies up there because Chinese need batteries, so they were buying into this lithium operation in Canada, and the government stopped it because they said, well, these are strategic resources. Even though they weren't using them and had no facilities set up to mine them or do anything, they will basically just stop the transaction. So at some point, all these people who are holding these U.S. dollars, these IOUs that we've been shipping all over the world, trillions of them, if all of a sudden they can't exchange those dollars for something that means something, some sort of something of commercial value or economic value, and the government said, well, no, I'm sorry, you can't buy this or you can't buy that, what happens? I mean, this thing could, and then add some sort of economic or military or some sort of shock, and I don't know what that might be, the black swan, as they say. Perhaps the thing could well come unglued, and it could be just like Russia experienced in I guess the wall came down in 89, so let's just say in 89, and from there on forward. But yes, I think we're in. I think that we're all moving along and living our lives because it doesn't pay a great deal of return to sit and worry about things. But the United States can be demonstrated to be in a very, very tenuous position. And as our allies this winter in the EU start, the people are going to get very uncomfortable if they have a cold winter. With all their energy being shut off, you're going to find out that can blow back in our face.
Yeah, so not only do we have the possible economic meltdown, but nuclear war. All these things are scary things. But we still got to be positive. Still got to stay confident, but face the facts. This is a difficult moment in our history, and it's a time of real reflection about what we're going to continue to do. Not that we have much power over some of the people who actually make these decisions. They seem to be not very interested in reflecting the will of the people if it means them losing their gravy train. But Sir Owen, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, sir, for joining us as always.
It's a pleasure, David. I love your show.
Thank you for coming on. That's it for A Neighbor's Choice, folks. Remember, this is the show that continues to grow online, on podcast, on radio. So you want to make sure that you subscribe to whatever venue is your preference. If you want to be on the video platform, go to rumble.com, type in A Neighbor's Choice, subscribe there. That helps you stay in touch with all of our video content. If you like the audio podcast, search for David Gornoski on your podcast platform, subscribe, rate it, review it, that whole thing. That helps us there. But wherever you find us, remember, we have the choice to make the world a better place with our own life, not politicians. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.